Hey everyone, I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Sconcy Business, and today we're here with Tony Perkins, who is the founder of Bankroll. Thank you so much for being on. Do you want to just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott. Let's see, where do I start? I've been in software since I was like 10. Took a liking to it, and been kind of doing it ever since. I think Bankroll is probably the equivalent amount of joy as like when I did like a MS Paint clone in Turbo Pascal on was it Apple GS? Is way back in the day. Yeah. Let's see. I went to MIT for grad school, for undergrad, and then BU for business school later, and been in financial services. Worked for State Street in foreign exchange, global markets and things like that, and then more on the retail side at Fidelity for 5 years. So basically 10 and 10 and a whole bunch of startups in between. I think my first job was actually at an MIT startup.
Okay.
So did some handwriting recognition, but yeah, just a lot of software development, all kinds of different things. I wish I got more into gaming. So I guess Bankroll was kind of like scratching my gaming itch, like late in the game. But yeah, basically been doing this for a while, and got into Bitcoin in 2011. Actually got a chance to meet Roger Ver and stuff in person. Eric Voorhees in person at the first International Bitcoin Conference in New York City. So that was great. Was running miners and all that stuff, but some of us kind of slipped out of it, and I was already in financial services. So I said, if I ever got back into it again, I wouldn't quit. And so after my fintech career, did a little bit of cosmetics and kind of got my ass handed to me. So I said, let me go back and try to do something I know, and found Ethereum, and then the rest is what we have today.
Awesome. Yeah, and that also covered my next question was, when did you originally get into blockchain? So can you give us a bit of an introduction to what Bankroll is all about for people who have no idea, and then maybe you can give a more in-depth breakdown for people who are more familiar with TRON and cryptocurrency?
Got it. So at a very high level, Bankroll is like a credit union where, in the sense that it's and credit unions are the best example of what a financial mutual organization is. But really, a financial mutual organization can be anything, right? It can have any core services at the center, but the main point is that you have a membership that contributes and then sells out the services and disperses the profits equitably. And so there's a lot more economic incentive for the participants, instead of just being on the customer side of the relationship. It really all in. And so if you look at Bankroll, it is a network of smart contracts on the TRON blockchain. These are written in Solidity, so they could run on Ethereum just as well. I actually started out on Ethereum. The reason they ended up on TRON is purely from a usability perspective. There's so many transactions that happen in real time on Bankroll that, and they're user initiated, that it makes sense to run on something that's fast. And so TRON being delegated proof of stake, but basically the Ethereum EVM, it works out pretty well. So Bankroll has a couple of core contracts, probably the most popular ones, and some of them haven't even existed that long, but they're very popular. Like, the network's been around for a year, but Save is our equivalent of a savings account. We have the Banker token, which captures the value of the network and all the economic activity. And that's one of the, gets a ton of traffic on the TRON blockchain. And then we have Swap, which was also released recently, and that's the liquidity pool for the banker. So probably another half a dozen contracts to do different things, but those are the main ones that allow people to onboard quickly and also participate in the main economic drivers. And once again, everyone's all in, and everything's equitable.
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, we went through that last week, and Tony gave me a demo, and I really like the UI and the way it's all set up. I think it's really clean and really simple and easy to use. Very refreshing to see that, because a lot of places where you might stake your TRON or really any currency, sometimes the UI and some of the features are really lacking. So I think that's really, really key to make note of. So what problem do you feel Bankroll goes out to solve in the space right now?
Basically, if you think about wealth, what actually is wealth? Well, wealth is cash flow. When people see stocks, rising, growth stocks like Tesla, and even things like Bitcoin, that's not wealth generation. If you talk to Warren Buffett, he talks about cash flow. If you talk about in balance sheets, if you talk to Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, he talks about cash flow. Cash flow is king. Bankroll's motto is cash flow for all. And it really is about economic inclusion. And economic inclusion in crypto to date has been, with even Bitcoin, hold this bag, and then we'll get back to you. And the price may or may not go up. Well, if you hold the bag and you can't really scrape off the top, you can't even pay your bills, right? You're speculating and you're waiting, you're hoping and you're wishing. Bankroll was born in crypto nuclear winter. Had some of our best growth right in the middle of crypto winter without an end in sight. And it was all because of cash flow. So we have these economic engines in a business where we have large participants, whales, we have minnows, newbies, everyone coming in. That splash damage from the whales, coming in and out. It's all, at the end of the day, most simple financial systems are based on pooling resources, putting in the work, and the economic horizons of the individual participants. So basically, long story short, not everybody gets in at the same time. Not everybody needs their money at the same time. So if you take, what's the difference between like the Federal Reserve and like your local bank that's existed for like a very long time, right? The local bank is probably the closest thing to how Bankroll works, except on a global scale. But and we're probably larger than your average community bank at this point, with like over 10,000 participants across the network on a good day. So, but long story short, that having access to that economic activity and being able to derive pretty significant return on investment on both a daily basis and an annual basis, compounded daily, actually compounded down to the minute for most things. That's how it works. And really, for something like Save, you have a great zero fee savings account, but with interest because of the banker token that's competitive with hedge fund returns. We had a little pump recently in bankers, but we'll see. It's all fun, and I just wanted to make something that was based on something where I could give back my experience, but really I wanted to try to build a working machine on the blockchain. I think I'll end with this. I just discovered this yesterday, but I thought this was great. Ray Dalio, most people know who Ray Dalio is, one of the most successful money managers in the world. And he basically says, that the economy is just a couple of simple machines. You have the long-term debt cycle, you have the short-term debt cycle, and then you have productivity, and then everything is a function of that. And then everything is, and the smallest cog in all of that is just simply transactions. And really, that's how I built Bankroll from the start. I basically little simple cogs, transactions, and then wiring those together, and then creating inputs and outputs where I could rewire the network as well. So there's mature parts of the network that I've wired new contracts to, tested, learned, removed those contracts. Everybody got out of those contracts, and so forth.
Okay, awesome. So, what kind of got you into passive income, and have you mainly been focused on passive income from a crypto perspective, or is it kind of like your overall financial approach? What are your thoughts there?
Um, so at the beginning of my career in fintech, I was exposed to the trading side, and there's definitely money to be made there. And even swap one is one of our contracts. It's a liquidity pool, but there's still some aspects of trading there, though it's mostly automated. In general, though, especially being at Fidelity for 5 years, they have over, I don't even know where it's at now, but like well over 7 trillion funds under management. The way you make money is through cash flow. And so really no cash flow is passive. It's just how are you participating in it? So when you receive passive cash flow, remember that you're just basically a silent partner. You're just not involved in the operating of whatever is actually generating that cash flow. So no cash flow is passive. So and in the sense of what's the engine in Bankroll? The main engine for wealth appreciation is time itself. So basically, the difficulty, the difficulty in mining for the banker token influences overall the overall distribution of the token over time. And so it's very similar to Bitcoin. As the token gets more difficult to mine, the price should go up, and the supply of the banker token is 21 million, right? But then you have things like save, which is applying time and the amount of resources that you basically stake in that savings contract against the mining difficulty. So it's time itself that's actually producing. It's algorithmic, and it's basically a simple staking algorithm. That's what's producing the value. So that's really Save has become overnight, because Save is a new contract, but overnight Save has become the sort of heartbeat of the network, and it's a very strong heartbeat. And we were sort of blowing through a lot of initial mining difficulty stages. Every 1 million, we go to a higher difficulty in terms of mining. So we've blown through like 2 stages since Save has been released, but
Wow.
eventually the mining difficulty will win out because it is an exponential type of curve.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So how did Bankroll get its name, and what was sort of the motivations for naming it?
Really? Okay, so this is a great story because I'm really bad at names. I did a social network that was kind of like Dig, if you remember Dig or Reddit, and I called that RGB Daily, and I spent like a year and a half of my life that was my pet project for a while. So that's a horrible name, RGB Daily. Only nerds get that. And the color of a 3 colors of a pixel can represent any color, everything daily. Haha, no. Then I had Party on Ethereum, which is very close, that had some of the initial ideas of Bankroll in it, but it's called Party. with a 4, P4RTY, which stood for participation for real-time yield. And so I was like, okay, 3 strikes and you're out. I mean, and I actually did a good job of naming. I was the CTO of a product at Fidelity called FidSafe, and I named that on a late night coding with like my partner in crime at the time. So we did could there, and Fidelity, they couldn't resist having the word FID in the beginning. Like, you want to win, just put FID at the beginning, and you're gonna have like all this support from like the lifers that work at Fidelity. So.
Yeah.
So FidSafe was good. That was like a document storage system. But anyway, Bankroll was just like, okay, low key, I think I want to build a bank. And then I kind of went from there. and then like Bankroll was on a long list. And then, you just type it into, AWS or GoDaddy or whatever and see what's available. And, TRON. TRON had Tron.network, a couple of other places, Celsius.network. Actually, when I do the tour, when I do the sort of, I don't know when we're going to get back to that. I guess we'll talk about that later. But like when I did the conferencing, there's a couple of people that I've seen like on more than a couple occasions now, and that kind of puts a smile on my face. So like Alex Mashinsky, Celsius Network, great guy, kind of like. Also kind of solving the same problem, global financial inclusion, making it, simple for people to get a lot of interest, but anyway, Celsius Network, a lot of things, .network, Bankroll Network. I was like, yep, this is a winner. So that was it.
Awesome. Yeah, because it's funny that you say that, because a lot of people that I talk to are like, I had a long list and I was just going through a domain registrar and just kind of typing them all out to see what was available. And then eventually you kind of land on one and you're like, yep, that's, I can't be bothered to type in anymore. So, yeah, but no, Bankroll is definitely perfect for what it sort of represents, and it sort of works with the name and like what you would assume it would sort of do. So what are some of the next big things you have in the works for Bankroll?
So, really, the number one thing is, and just like why I'm talking with you is really we just got to get the word out. Now we've had a lot of strong organic growth on the Tron blockchain. We are the probably just by the numbers, outside of super representative voting, people trust their Tron with Bankroll more than anywhere else. So on chain. So really, at this point, we just need to get the word out. I've had a chance to meet the Tron Foundation, in face-to-face and things like that. We have to keep fostering that relationship and bolstering that relationship. But really figure out, what's the go mark. It's kind of go time, right? Having just happened, got to get the word out. Long term, or at least probably the second half of the year, we need to see what happens with price appreciation on both the Bitcoin front and also Tron front. The gains for Bankroll are kind of baked in. We have over, what is it? I lost track, but like over 170 million in Tron and assets under management. But that's coming out to about 2.5 million assets under management. So wow. If you put Bankroll on DeFi Pulse, for example, we're in the top 20. So, there's a large fall off, by the way. So, it's like, some of the bigger projects, hundreds of millions, but then 50 million, but, yeah, not a lot of projects in DeFi have a couple million in them. And, it doesn't take much for that price to appreciate. And so, I tell the number one thing I tell the community is like, we've already won. We just gotta keep doing what we've been doing this whole time. And here's the scary part. So if you look at the sort of static, like what's the current book value of the network, that only tells half the picture. Because if you look at the actual volume in terms of like the money coming in and out, because that's the true purpose of a financial institution, right? Is to that cash flow. That cash flow is orders of magnitude bigger, larger than the actual thing. So we've pushed, you know, just a lot of TRON, and some of our sort of stat partners have the exact numbers, and I need to look at that again too.
Awesome, awesome. And would you say that there's any? Well, I guess there is, but how would you compare yourself to other similar projects, and how would you say that you differ? I guess within TRON and even outside of TRON.
Okay. So right now, there really isn't anything like Bankroll.
Okay.
It is a complete ecosystem that's wired together to work, and it does work. It performs without a lot of promotion, whatever. It really solves. It really does what it's supposed to do. That said, many systems in DeFi can, at the end of the day, generate yield. But I think that our returns are anywhere from 0.03 to sometimes on a good day 0.5% a day, based on the amount of volume that we're pushing. So for some of the more competitive PvP contracts that are more like exchanges with exchange fees coming in and out, where it's sort of kind of like a HODL game, those ones, 90 days is kind of the maximum time to even out in ROI, or not to ROI, but break even. And then after that, it's perpetual profits for as long as you're in the contract. So there's not a lot of systems like that. I think one of the problems is that in traditional DeFi, you have collateralized loans, you have exchanges, you have profit sharing based on those types of models, and there's not necessarily a lot of additional innovation outside of that. Now, I think just because of my experience in the industry, like in the traditional industry, I kind of like, and also knowing that in traditional DeFi, that people had already worked on that. Maker was already done, Celsius already done. It's like, okay, I'm just not going to go there. Like some people in the community, say, oh, can't we do collateralized loans? It's like, well, if you really think about it, collateralized loans are a horrible product. It's a clunky margin account. You don't necessarily want that. You don't necessarily need that. If you have cash flow, then you can just pay your bills outright and not have to settle on the back end. So, so that's really the focus. So, we've inspired clones. A lot of those clones have come and gone. A lot of those clones were scams. And so over time, at least in the TRON community, people, and also Ethereum community, frankly, especially for the people who are looking for passive income contracts or anything that will generate yield. There's a community out there for that. Sort of like a gray area because traditionally, before Bankroll, a lot of these things were like kind of, the lead developer. No offense, but the lead developer was like in the Ukraine. It's that. No one would dive too deep into that, but you know what I'm talking about. Like that was the deal, and all of a sudden, the contract drained. What happened? Moving on.
Yeah.
Everybody's used to it. So, but contracts don't drain in Bankroll. Bankroll has a heartbeat. It works like a real, does your bank drain. No.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, so it does, those things just don't happen. So, but will there be copycats? I'm not sure. Like, I know you wanted to talk about, like, how I actually get paid and stuff. Like, I'm not I'm not sure. I'm not sure there'll be copycats. I think it's kind of hard. Like, or there won't be well capitalized copycats. I don't think.
Mm.
It's just who wants to build that? Like, I don't know if anyone wants to basically, like, how do you like, when I don't necessarily have a stake in Bankroll. I manage positions, and yes, I managed positions in the different contracts, knowing that, having the confidence in myself to hold strong during the dark times and capitalize on them to, like, gain percentage and things like that. And then things like save it doesn't even matter, right? There's no shares in save, right? It's just basically staking. Anyone can come in and stake as much as they want, and that's just going to contribute to how fast the banker token gets mined. That was a long answer, but like, it's one of those things where also there's the network effects as well. So there's the network effects as well. But I think in terms of a sort of traditional commercial financial endeavors, there are ways to build solutions where you get higher margins, I should say.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Before we dive into sort of how you go about taxes and doing a lot of things in crypto, where do you see Bankroll going in the next year, and then ideally in the next, like, 5 years, let's say?
Okay. So one of the things that I've been working on in the very short term is just autonomy. And from a technical perspective, I think that it is pretty much autonomous, like, right now. So, unstoppable domains for the front door, right? Having the front end source code hosted on Unstoppable and other types of vendors, where, like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow with the license plate COVID-19, like, that the system just keeps on running. That's actually already here today. So the back end is 100% running on the TRON blockchain itself. Those contracts are cemented in stone. And the front ends, you can run the front end locally. You can, and the front end is hosted on several services that are free, several services that are decentralized. So it's unstoppable now. Want to do a UI refresh at some point, maybe have it look a little bit more like, oh yeah, this looks like closer to my bank or something. Make some, maybe that makes it more, I don't know, maybe it gets into more hands that way. After that, marketing, financial education, just talking to people in general about, or into younger folks, kids, really, like, by 15 years old, you really should be having the conversation about how to manage your money, because you should be working to, like, do a real job, learn something from someone. But sort of outreach in that way, probably, like, just spread the word, and similar to, like, and I know you're very passionate about sharing ideas around passive income and things like that. That's your thing. Like, I think there's just more of us from different perspectives just need to be doing that, educating people around the world around how to better prepare themselves financially. Especially, I think this health crisis has kind of shed a light on people who did the sort of standard things, have 3 months worth of rent or
Hmm.
paycheck in the bank for a rainy day, those sort of basic things that people talk about. Well, guess what? If you had those things, you got some help from the government, and you had your safety net, and you just got to spend more time with your family, and you probably wouldn't just strangle them.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people that I talk to and friends of mine, during this time, if they still have their job and they still have an income and they're obviously saving ridiculous amounts of money, not, wasting it all. So now they're like, oh, like maybe I should start investing. Like I'm gonna start getting into this now, and I think that's great. But I also think that it was pretty ridiculous that they waited to start investing in a crisis. They definitely should be doing this way before. But I mean, I do think it's good that it's happening, but it's definitely a little late. So, but the earlier people start, the better. It's never too late. So I do think that that's good that people are starting to take things a little more seriously and sort of look at their lives from a 360-degree perspective and really focus on their finance. So with that being said, I want to turn the conversation more towards crypto and how you deal with like taxes and how you spend crypto. So let's start off with talking about how you spend crypto, because May is fiat free month. So there's a lot of people this month who are challenging people to spend in only crypto or just find creative ways to not spend regular fiat. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, I think that'd be awesome.
It's great. So since the life, I won't go back too far in history, but like for Bankroll, there's a lot of great use cases. So in Bankroll, anything that's ever been done, for example, for Bankroll, so for the market, on the marketing side, I really don't do a ton of marketing. I manage the Twitter account. That's it. I'm in Telegram like everyone else. But everyone who's there, like as an admin, people doing memes, ads, everything, paid in TRON or paid in Banker. Banker hasn't been around for the whole life of the network, but since Banker's come around, Banker's been like a key currency within the network to just get anything done. Like my official sort of role is custodian, which basically means I'm the janitor, I'm the window washer. I do whatever needs to physically be done for the network. And so myself, others, all get paid in Banker. In terms of the real world, my transport of choice is being in the States and stuff is either Gemini dollar or USDC, and that's like the hard break for me. So I actually right now don't actually manage any personal crypto positions. I'm just collecting a check from Bankroll, or my company is. So my Bankroll pays my company pays me. My company is what the government sees. A good way that I like to describe it, and let me know if you want to break it up into the next, maybe talk about how I do taxes specifically, because I can talk about that now. But basically,
Yeah, first let's just focus on spending.
yeah. So spending. So really, for spending, my personal spending, for my
Like
personal
do you
spending,
do you use like a crypto Visa card, or do you use Bitrefill, or like are there any like services or things you utilize to be able to just spend crypto on a day-to-day basis? And if you want to
yeah.
share that with other people who might want to take advantage of those.
Right, because I'm in because at the end of the day I'm a business owner, and also I'm in the States. I usually just top up my checking account through an exchange.
Mm.
And actually, I
Okay,
don't
so
even trade at this point. I don't. I send USDC. So the cool part is that if I just send USDC or Gemini dollars to an exchange and then just basically convert it to US dollars and wire it to a checking account, there's no tradable event there. So
Okay.
put that in big arrows, red sign, neon sign. There's no tradable event there, people. Like, you can actually move money efficiently and stay within your $10,000 per day limit, and you're just managing cash flow. All good.
Okay, so you don't actually ever directly spend crypto on like a website or on a day-to-day basis, but I still think that's an interesting way that you do it, where you take the payouts and then you send them to your company and then you get paid that way. And that's another interesting way that I haven't really covered around being able to get your crypto out without actually having to trade. And just to reiterate, so there is no ways that you currently spend crypto like on a website or anything like that.
Like for Unstoppable, so there's plenty of services that I use that like do accept crypto or crypto native, like Unstoppable Domains, for example. You pay in ETH or something like that. So yeah, all day long with those types of things. But like, for my personal stuff, like buying toilet paper, people seem to buy a lot of toilet paper these days. That's through Amazon, and that's the regular mechanisms. My whole thing with crypto specifically is here's the other thing. So being in fintech so long, I've seen the progression, right? And I know the history because I have to deal with legacy systems. I have to deal with legacy systems that are written in COBOL, running on mainframes, and that function is not going to change. I think it was New Jersey? New Jersey couldn't do their payroll for this crisis. I mean, their unemployment for this crisis. Couldn't make changes because they didn't have the COBOL programmers to update the mainframe. So those are realities where basically the systems that power the actual electronic systems that power the economy are a living, breathing ecosystem. And, there are things that are like alligators that are old and robust and don't change a lot and just work. Those things are still going to work. Like ACH, which is the whole checking system and stuff, that's still going to just work. And so a lot of, if you look at Square, for example, and what they're doing with Bitcoin. So Square is a great financial services company. They started out servicing, owner operators and things like that. And now they're switching to retail banking. But if you really look closely, they have a checking account. They don't have a savings account. What's their savings account? Bitcoin. So their savings account is Bitcoin. They don't have a savings product. Their savings product is Bitcoin. They want people to buy Bitcoin. So, and then they just make buying Bitcoin easy and sending Bitcoin from one person to the other easy. And like, you don't need Lightning. That's kind of clunky. If you have Cash App, that has a trusted, secure database where you can just do that layer 2 and it's all good. I don't use Cash App and I don't send people Bitcoin via Cash App because it creates a taxable event. And they will report any money that goes to any Bitcoin received. It's like, well, you need to report how you got that Bitcoin. So because it's not cash. It's cash. Yeah. It's just limits. There's just wire limits, daily wire limits. So that's why the digital dollar is important, because the laws that I'll just say that the laws that kind of like restricted organized crime, like let's get down to brass tacks. The laws that sort of like restricted put choking points for organized crime. Those laws are important. So it's not just about freedom and liberty. It still is about protecting people. And if you and sort of cash flow is oxygen. And so if you don't have capital controls in place, then like bad things happen. So, but if you understand and sort of play by rules, like, so basically, like if you're only pushing less than $10,000 a day, you're probably not hurting a lot of people if you're doing something bad. So that's kind of how it works. And some of these ideas are still antiquated, but you know, this is the underbelly of financial services. If you and you know, we talk about FISA warrants and things like that. These are the things that that I've personally been exposed to, and yeah.
So how would you recommend that, you know, the average person would get started with finding a creative solution to not have a taxable event and being able to get their crypto?
I think, and I'm just gonna. This is not an ad. This is not an ad, but like, you know, it's just really brass tacks of it all. For the easiest thing you can do, and this is what I recommend to Bankroll community members, if you do have access to Coinbase, use it. Like these companies like Square, Coinbase, they have lawyers, they have professionals that are solving these problems so that crypto can really scale. Like, understand that they are employing professionals that have been in industry, and they're also employing the best and the brightest out of college and things like that to solve these problems. So support them and help them grow. But specifically, for there's two services I like. There's Changely. I think Changely is based out of Israel. There's Changely, and then there's Coinbase, or even Gemini. Like, say, whoa, Gemini. Well, you need a recognized, secure digital dollar. And I actually believe that the digital dollar is going, like Coinbase and potentially Gemini will be vendors of the state-backed dollar in the United States. You heard it here first. I think that they, you know, Mnuchin, the head of counsel at Coinbase, I forget his name, but he was he was hired as head counsel at Coinbase, did all legal work on digital dollar there. Then was hired by Steve Mnuchin, but that wasn't an accident, because that guy actually worked with Steve Mnuchin like a decade ago in 2008. So if you actually look at Steve Mnuchin's roundtable, these are all people that he's worked with in the past, and that actually happens a lot. Like I worked with my old boss at State Street, and then he brought me over to Fidelity. But then I actually consulted for Fidelity when I was like in my 20s, like pretty much just out of college. So that's just the way that financial services world works. Like, relationships are the most important thing. So, and trust is the most important thing. It's hard to find people that behave well around a lot of money, is basically what it comes down to. So anyway, long story short, Coinbase, what you do is, and you can do this on, like, I think Kyber's a great exchange. So with Changely, no matter what major crypto you're starting from, you know, top 100, whatever, you start with your major crypto in top like 150, let's say TRON or ETH or ETC or whatever you're, you know, playing with. If you use Changely, you don't have to worry about the exchanges. It's non-custodial. It's going to reliably convert you over at competitive rates, which is what's really important, at really competitive rates. So Changely is your hop, and your hop should always, 90% of the time, if you're trying to get it to so that you can spend it, or pay bills in the real world, it should be to ETH. Then from ETH, or actually, if you're using Changely, you can go directly from your source crypto to USDC directly. And then from USDC, you just send it straight to your Coinbase account, and then you can, with zero fees, convert it to US dollars and put it in your checking account.
Wow.
Another cool thing is ACH. Once you do ACH transactions twice, 3 times, it basically is effectively a T+1 wire transfer. So the only difference between a wire transfer, you'll get it same day before close of business. But if you do, like, Coinbase will give you this long estimated time. But once you've done that transaction a couple of times, a relationship is formed, and that transaction will actually happen next day. So as long as it's not on a Friday. So it's basically T+1, which is awesome. So basically, Changely is a big power tool. CoinSwitch sometimes. Those two. And what's actually happening under the covers is that's a trade. Changely is going to, for most of the major cryptos, is going to go through Binance. So you're going to get a high liquidity, best price. Anyway, without having to deal with like you can use Changely as a U.S. citizen. You can't use Binance, or you can't use the Binance that has all the traditional Binance that has all the liquidity, or you use Binance US, but I think it has the same liquidity pool. So, but yeah, that's basically how I do it. And basically very, very low fees. You never want to buy crypto with a credit card. Very high fees.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then, do you use any like specific services or software for doing your taxes with the crypto coming in, and what does that look like?
So when you're paying yourself in cash equivalent dollars, you just report your cash income. So the best way that I describe it is, think of Bankroll or some type of sovereign business on the blockchain as like a bike path, right? And there's people going along that bike path, right? And they stop at like a hot dog stand, or they stop at a lemonade stand. They're exchanging transactions, right? And it's up to that business, that hot dog stand, to actually self-report, because you're getting cash equivalent income. So basically, that's how you want to do it. You want to.
So would you suggest that people find a way to create some sort of business entity to then pay themselves to, in sort of the way that you've done it? Do you think that's like realistic for a lot of people? Like, how challenging is that process?
Forming an LLC for the purposes of being a sole proprietor, whether you're a designer, whether you're a social media marketer, whether you're a programmer, if you sell your services to someone, then just as a good business practice, you need to, at a minimum, form an LLC so that you have liability protection legally. And then on top of that, you also want to, once you form, you also want to go one step deeper and actually get liability insurance. So, like, as a designer, am I going to do something that's going to cause like loss of life event, or somebody's going to lose a lot of money because I design a logo wrong or something like that? No, but like maybe something more simple, like, oh, you committed copyright infringement, you copied my logo. Like, oh no, I didn't. Well, I'm going to take you to court anyway, because I'm litigious. That's why you want to have liability insurance. You can't do that just as individual. Like, and if you do it as an individual, you have no protection. You're liable. So you want to have that LLC, limited liability. I mean, it's in the name, right? Limited liability corporation. You want to have
Yeah.
that as the basic protection. And so that's actually good practice, best practice for anyone selling any service of any kind. And it only
Okay.
costs about $75 to incorporate, at least in the United States, most
True.
places.
So it's a measly fee for people to pay.
Right. It's something you can do like in States, we have LegalZoom, other services, click.
True. Awesome. So how many users are currently on Bankroll right now?
So we have around 16,000 unique impressions across the network, and that's an impression like per contract type of thing. In terms of actual users, it's probably closer to around 6,000, between 6 and 10,000. There's some drop off, but it's really hard to tell on the blockchain without some deep analytics, which is actually one thing I forgot to mention though. Once the actual network is done, there's a couple more contracts coming out, but the deep analytics is something that we're going to do, start data mining all those events that are getting kicked out by the network and presenting that to the users as well. So that's going to be a ton of projects around analytics, and that's really what's going to take it from a contract that works and that at the end of the day generates cash for you to like, oh wow, this really feels like a bank. I can look at all my transaction histories and all this stuff, and there's a little bit of that today, but like it's not overkill.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything for Bankroll, and then for people who are trying to learn how to get their crypto out without having taxable events and taking advantage of finding creative ways to get their crypto that they normally weren't aware of or just haven't taken advantage of before. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing these solutions and talking about Bankroll and educating my audience. And for everyone watching, definitely check it out. Try playing around, put some Tron in, grab some Banker. Let Tony know what you think on Twitter, or where's the best place for people to keep up with Bankroll and to like trade feedback and just keep in contact with you.
Definitely follow the Twitter Bankroll_status for major announcements and contests and things like that. Also, at Bankroll Network on Telegram is where the community hangs out. Yeah, those are the main places.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is everything from me. I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully everyone learned a little bit.
Thanks so much, Scott. Great conversation, and talk to you soon.
Awesome. All right. Cheers.
Thanks for sticking around. Since you did, please give this video a like. And if you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe. You can also support me by donating to the addresses below. If you're using an Ethereum wallet, you can send to scottcbusiness.eth. If you're using another wallet like Coinami, Trust Wallet, Atomic Wallet, you can send to scottcbusiness.crypto. On both wallets, I accept Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ripple. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scottsy Business, signing off. Cheers.